Melatonin doesn't only help sleep, it drives all the repair processes in the body. So when we're exposed to artificial blue light at night, not only are we dysregulating our cortisol, our blood sugar, and insulin, we are also slowing down repair processes, which is why artificial light at night is linked to every chronic disease you can imagine, but including a lot of hormonal cancers, because it's shifting our hormones, causing cortisol release. So it's wild that when we go with more of these fire-toned lights at night, people sleep better, they have fewer hot flashes at night.
All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to have Dani Hamilton on the show today. Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Zora. So excited to be here.
I'm super excited to talk about blood sugar and CGMs and circadian biology, all the things that you know so much about. But before we do, I just want to have a quick understanding of your background and how you got into this world of metabolic health.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't excited about blood sugar before I knew anything about it. And I really felt very removed from it. I was like, blood sugar, I don't have to pay attention to that. I don't have diabetes. Like, it wasn't even on my radar. I used to study so much about holistic health to try to heal myself. I had all these allergies and asthma and sinus infections and inflammation and acne. And I did a paleo diet and it helped heal all of those things just miraculously. And so I was like shouting from the rooftops, food is medicine. You know, we've been lied to about the food pyramid and all that. And so I got really into it. And then I had a really stressful year. I moved from Miami, Florida back to New York, and it was winter and I was inside and it was cold and gross out. And I was eating the same foods, that healthy paleo diet that helped heal me. And then I was in New York in the winter eating those same foods, and I started to gain weight. I started to, instead of having acne around my periods, it was like all over my cheeks, all over my forehead, cystic acne. I was like, what is happening right now? I thought acne was supposed to go away as you age. I'm getting into my mid 20s. I'm like, I thought it was supposed to go away. I was promised. And then I started gaining weight, and my periods, my PMS was horrible. I would have the worst breast tenderness and all this bloating. And then I didn't get my period for 6 months and then 3 months. And I was like, what's going on? So I obviously took to Google and kind of figured I had polycystic ovarian syndrome based on all my symptoms. I never had the facial hair or the hair loss from the head, luckily, but I definitely had all those other symptoms, got diagnosed with it at a gynecologist who so lovingly told me, you do have PCOS, you have to lose weight, you have to take the pill, and there's no cure. I was like,
Oh my.
okay, cool, dude. So he forced me to walk out of his office with a prescription for the pill, which I proceeded to rip up when I got in my car because I knew it was a class 1 carcinogen, and I had horrible reactions to it when I had taken different types of the pill in college. So I knew that wasn't my answer, but I was still struggling. I ended up getting on 2 medications that are common with PCOS, which are spironolactone and metformin. Metformin is a diabetes drug, but I didn't know that at the time, so I didn't make that connection. And so I got some relief from these medications, which definitely helped me. But I knew that I didn't want to do that for long term. It definitely helped at the time, but I really just wanted to find out why this was happening to me. And I just couldn't let go of the fact, like, I didn't always have this. Like, why is this happening now? I didn't feel like my body is now stuck this way permanently. I was like, I always just felt in my bones that there has to be a way to not have this anymore, because this is just a collection of symptoms. And so there's some sort of imbalance here. And so despite what the gynecologist told me, I do believe I can get rid of this. So I was listening to every single podcast you can imagine, reading every blog, reading every book about PCOS, and all of them were saying, don't have gluten, dairy, or refined sugar. And I was like, okay, check, check, check. I'm doing paleo. So I was like, well, I'm doing everything right. And so I just was like, I guess I'll just paleo harder. And since nothing changed, obviously nothing changed. And finally, one day I was driving, listening to a podcast, and I heard someone say, PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries. And I almost got into an accident. I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? And so I was saying to myself, what do I know about diabetes? And I said, okay, it has something to do with blood sugar. And at the time, I was a speech pathologist working in nursing homes, long-term care facilities. And I knew that all my patients with diabetes got the pink sugar packet instead of the white one. And a lot of them had amputations. And that was all I knew about blood sugar and diabetes. So obviously it was something that I avoided, like I said, because I didn't think I had to pay attention to my blood sugar. I was like, this is so not even a thing for me. And so I really dove into understanding what are the symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation. I've heard of diabetes awareness, and I'm like, okay, I'm aware of diabetes, but I don't know anything about it. And so if I didn't know what the symptoms were of diabetes, I was never going to know what the symptoms of early blood sugar dysregulation is, because when we're talking about type 2 diabetes, not the autoimmune condition, which is type 1, we're talking about something that is a really slow build over decades, and insulin resistance develops, the blood sugar starts going up, and then it gets so high that now the doctors are concerned about it. That was just so foreign to me. So I started to learn the early signs, and I started to see that a lot of things that I thought were personality traits were actually signs of blood sugar dysregulation. So being the hangry friend, that's not normal. That's not a personality trait. There's memes about that all over the internet. It's like, oh, she's hangry just like her mama. And it's like, she is also experiencing blood sugar dysregulation. Let me tell you. Another one was I used to say, I don't have a sweet tooth. All my teeth are sweet, because I just thought that having a sweet tooth was part of my personality. Turns out it wasn't. I used to say, I'm just a breakfast person, because when I would wake up, I would kind of be a little shaky, and I would need to have something right away, and usually it was coffee, and I would have coffee and then start shaking again. And I was just like, oh, I'm just over caffeinated. And when I first got a blood sugar monitor, I tested my blood sugar and it was 63, which is very low. And so I wasn't over caffeinated, I was hypoglycemic. Then another one was I used to carry food in my purse or have almonds in the car. I was always having food. I always had food on my person because I used to say, I'm just a foodie. I just like food. No, honey. Like, you have, again, your blood sugar is crashing. I used to eat before I went out to eat. I used to eat before I left my house. I was always thinking about my next meal. So I'd be with friends, we would go out to eat, and I would be like, when am I going to eat again? Where? I would be nervous about it. And I always thought this was just because I hated feeling hungry, because hunger in my body, I didn't know that hunger in a healthy body feels like, oh, I'm hungry, I could eat. It's like, oh, maybe my stomach, or just, oh, I'm just a little hungry. That was not the way my body experienced hunger. My body experienced hunger in a way where it was like the gas light was going on in the car, like alert, alert, low fuel. And so what was happening was my brain was starting to struggle to get energy. My mitochondria struggling to get energy, because the different systems in my body, the hormones, were kind of blocking that from happening, which we could go into later. But I experienced hunger as a blood sugar crash or a blood sugar dip. And so it felt horrible in my body for me to feel hungry. So I would feel often dizzy, shaky, anxious, hangry, brain fog, feeling weak or tired, fatigued, difficulty concentrating. Some people get headaches, heart palpitations, cravings, and then also intense and urgent hunger. So that urgent hunger is a sign, like, we don't have energy right now. We need fuel fast. And so when your body is experiencing this dip in energy, it's going to crave fast energy. So often that looks like some form of a refined carbohydrate, or just, oh, I'm just getting really snackish. I'm not able to say no to the muffins in the break room type of a thing. I'm not able to put off my hunger. I used to hear people say, oh my God, I think I forgot to eat today. And I'm like looking at them like, what the hell? I've never had that experience in my life. And I would look at them like, that's insane. That's impossible. You're lying. You're showing off. But now it's so crazy. I'll be on a podcast, and let's say the podcast goes through my lunchtime till 2 o'clock. I'm totally fine. I'm sitting here talking, full brain capacity. And so it's possible to heal that. And I didn't think it was. So the type of blood sugar issues that I was experiencing fall into the category of hypoglycemia. And I work with a lot of people who are hypoglycemic. I've had to come to specialize in this condition and all the different types of hypoglycemia, because I don't know of anyone else out there who's working on this. And so the people I see are really struggling and maybe needing to eat upwards of like 6, 10, 20 times a day, wake up overnight and eat. So I see people through the whole spectrum. But, when I was going to the doctor during this PCOS time, trying to figure out, hey, what's going on with my hormones, with my blood, like with anything, not blood sugar, I did get my fasting glucose tested, and it was always 60 or 63, which is very low.
Very
So
low.
I'll do the math in a second to get the millimoles for you guys. You
You
just
normally
divide
want
that
to
number
get,
by
yeah.
18.
You
3.3.
normally, it's, I think their fasting blood sugar, people I speak to kind of want it under, wait, around 85, 90, something like that would be normal.
So the optimal range that I use in my practice is 72 to 85. If you guys are outside of the US, just divide by 18 to get the millimoles. I'm so sorry. I don't have these calculations off the top of my head. I should. But yeah, so mine was lower than normal, but I didn't feel good even around 70. And a lot of my clients don't feel well under 100. They don't feel well under 90. So they need to keep their blood sugar higher and higher. And so we can go into that. But yeah, so my blood sugar was 60 or 63 over the maybe 5 different times I did blood work in that year, and no doctor said anything to me about it. They're just like, oh, it's under 100, great. And so that was my experience. But a lot of people experience blood sugar, most people, I would say, experience blood sugar that goes higher. So some people get these hypoglycemic feelings and dips initially, but often people are experiencing high blood sugar, and some people are like, oh God, my blood sugar never goes down. So we can have all different sides of the spectrum, but at the root of it is metabolic dysfunction. It comes down to our mitochondria and our hormones, our circadian rhythms, and so these things are at the root of it. But I was able to heal my blood sugar. I don't experience hypoglycemic dips anymore. I don't have that same needing to, oh, if I go to the gym, like I have to immediately go home and eat. No, I could go run an errand. And some people are like, oh my God, that would be unthinkable for me. And yeah, so it was really wild to see how optimizing my blood sugar and metabolic health effortlessly helped my PCOS go away. And so what I see for my premenopausal folks is that blood sugar and metabolic regulation can often just balance out our sex hormones. And there still is, even through perimenopause and menopause, there still is an important role for that underlying metabolic health, improving hormonal balance. I had one of my clients last round of my program, Blood Sugar Mastery. She's like, hey, I'm in my 50s and I experienced menopause around 48, and it's been several years, and I started spotting right after the program, is this normal? I got my period again. And she's like, I thought that 48 was a normal time to go through menopause, but she actually got her period back. After doing the program, she was able to get off metformin, reverse her prediabetes, and wouldn't you know, she started menstruating again. And it's a good thing. So we can see that it's really helping, but also those sex hormones, as we lose them through menopause, do impact our blood sugar regulation. So I know we'll get into all those things. But.
Yeah, and I want to talk, okay, I don't even know where to start. I have so many questions. What are the 3 main things you did to help reverse PCOS and regulate your blood sugar in the end?
So what I did would be totally different from what I would do now. Not totally different, but it's incomplete as compared to what I would do now. But I was eating that paleo diet, so all whole foods, and I adopted a paleo ketogenic diet. So it was all whole foods, and I got into a state of nutritional ketosis. I also practiced circadian aligned intermittent fasting, which means I did not skip breakfast. I skipped dinner or did an early dinner, but that's not something I would really recommend for a lot of people with hypoglycemia. It's hard to say, like everything about these practices really needs to be personalized to each person. I really worked a lot on my digestion, so I had to work on my stomach acid and bile flow to be able to digest all the protein and fat and assimilate all those nutrients. And I moved back to Florida. And so I was getting a lot more sun and I was eating more seasonal foods, which is really important. And I think that looking back, one of the main reasons why that diet that was healing me in Florida didn't work for me and sort of led me to develop PCOS in New York is because I was eating foods that were completely out of season.
Well,
I was
eating in season in New York City in December when it's minus 30 or something.
Exactly. That's where the ketogenic diet would have been a great choice. And so I was eating bananas and acai bowls and having smoothies and full sweet potatoes and and honey and coconut sugar. And I was like, it's paleo, it's healthy carbs.
Okay. There's different ways people can heal themselves. And you in particular, you were looking at acne, weight gain, fatigue, hangriness, and again,
and really bad PMS.
And bad PMS, yeah. I want you to explain a little bit what is blood sugar and why we need to pay attention to it and the difference between hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia.
Sure. So our body likes to have a little bit of sugar in our blood at all times, like a teaspoon. It's not a lot. And it's what the body uses as energy. Now, we can also store energy. So we can store sugar in our liver and our muscles in the form of glycogen. So it's like glucose, it's like the storage form. So we do store some sugar in the liver. And then we also store energy as body fat. And so the body has a really tight regulation on how much sugar is in the blood at all times. So if it goes up really high, that's like out of homeostasis. So the body fights to bring it back down to that homeostasis level. I like to call it the Goldilocks zone. So it doesn't like the blood sugar too high. It doesn't like it too low. It likes it just right. And so if we get a high blood sugar because we ate, let's say, a lot of carbs, or we were in a sauna and we got all these stress hormones that are glucocorticoid hormones that release sugar into our bloodstream, then our body's going to balance that out and give us some insulin to help bring that back down. Now, insulin is a hormone. And remember, all hormones affect other hormones. So that's the connection. I had this high insulin happening, and that was dysregulating all my sex hormones. But so the insulin, it should come out, put the blood sugar away, just a good amount, so it goes back to baseline. Some people get too much insulin at meals, and then their blood sugar, they put away too much blood sugar, and then it goes down. So that's a reactive hypoglycemia type thing. And one of the things that's important to know about blood sugar is that the body's using this blood sugar in the blood and keeping it very maintained and using that glycogen in the liver to kind of balance things out between meals. So we're using glucose just as we're sitting here, as you're sitting there listening to this podcast, and it's ticking down a little bit, but then the body will register this and top you off with a little bit of that glycogen. And so you stay stable. That's not a hard process for the body. That's not a stressful process for the body. Some people experience a lot of difficulty with that because of certain hormonal imbalances and other reasons. But one of the main reasons why the body won't top you off is because high insulin levels in the blood are telling the body to be in a fat storage sort of mode. So it's like store energy, store fat, store glycogen, like build fat, not burn glycogen, not break down glycogen. So the high insulin levels can block the body from using its own body fat as fuel or using that glycogen as fuel. And same thing with this hormone called leptin. So leptin is made in our fat cells, and it goes up to the brain between meals and at night to give a read on how much stored energy we have. So at night, it should say, leptin should go up to my brain, to my hypothalamus, which is like the control tower, and say, hey, Danny's got this much glycogen, she's got this much body fat, she's got this much electrical charge, and this many nutrients. And you know what? The body fat's a little bit excess. So tomorrow, feel free to lower her appetite a little bit and feel free to go ahead and burn any of that fuel that you need. Like, we're good. We have glycogen. Go ahead and use that. That's when leptin is working well. That's how it can help to regulate our appetite. A lot of us have heard of leptin as the satiety hormone, but that's sort of the mechanism of, simplified, of how it works. Now, let's say I have really low leptin from years of yo-yo dieting, over fasting, over cutting carbs, over working out, like lots of restriction. I've told my body for a long time that food is scarce. Carbs are scarce. I'm not eating all the time. One meal a day, OMAD type deal. Your leptin may be super low from doing that for a long time. And so when leptin is low, or when we have leptin resistance, which often goes a little bit more hand in hand with an insulin resistant type picture, that the leptin then struggles to communicate with the brain. And so when leptin can't give that report, the body's like, I'm going to just assume that we're starving. We have no stored energy. We have no body fat. So obviously we're not going to be able to use that in between meals or overnight when we're not eating. So why don't you increase her appetite tomorrow? Make sure you're producing a lot of insulin at meals, because we really need to store. We need to put on storage. We need to put on body fat because we don't have any reserves. So between meals, you might not get that glycogen release because the body doesn't think it has any. So you might feel snackish between meals. You might feel like you need to eat between meals, or you might just always be thinking about food and trying to like, oh, I'm always hungry, but I'm trying not to eat. Maybe overnight you experience the fact that maybe your liver has run out of glycogen and it's time to switch into burning fat as fuel. And your body's like, girl, we don't have any. Mm-hmm. Or there's so much insulin that the insulin's like, don't you dare touch that. What's going to happen is your body's not going to be able to switch and turn that fat burning on. So your blood sugar will drop down to a level that your body's uncomfortable with it. And the adrenals come in and pump you with stress hormones, the glucocorticoid hormones, to create new glucose, to pump your blood sugar back up to a safe zone. And you just got woken up from an adrenaline spike, because that's what these stress hormones are. And so oftentimes this impacts how, like, our sleep. A lot of people are seeing these blood sugar dips at night, or they're waking up and they're like, I'm testing my blood sugar at night and it's normal or it's high. That's often because it just dipped and then it went high because of the stress hormones. But when you're woken up from a stress hormone surge, it's hard to go back to sleep. A lot of people say they wake up with a pounding heart, they're wide awake. A lot of people need to eat in the middle of the night in order to go back to sleep. So if that's the case, it's a very big indicator that blood sugar dysregulation and these hormonal imbalances at the root are driving some of these patterns that we see.
Does this hypoglycemic episodes at night, and you explained that the body is not seeing the fat, but you're saying that there is fat, but they're not seeing it, or is it just for lean people who have low body fat?
No, it could be and is often, especially in people who are overweight or who have excess weight or who are a regular weight or underweight. So it can happen to everybody. Yeah.
But how is it the body thinks that there's no fat when there is?
Because there's leptin resistance. So there's resistance to the message. So it's just getting so much leptin that the body's like, what is this noise? And it just dampens that signal. So it's not, it may be not that, oh, the body has no fat, it's nothing there, but certainly it's not seeing clearly there's a mismatch in how much fuel the body perceives that it has. And so that's often driven by that resistance piece.
Okay. So I love this. I want to dive a little bit deeper into these hypoglycemic events at night, because this is something I learned about 5 years ago from Dr. Michael Platt. I don't know if he wrote the adrenal, I don't know, response or something, his book. And I was shocked when he told me this. I was like, is it possible? And I was one of those. I was like trying to figure out, why would I wake up at 2 a.m. and then it's always the same time. And I wasn't having night sweats or anything at the time. And I had a blood sugar monitor on. And after that episode, I went and bought one and I tested my blood sugar and I saw at night I was going hypoglycemic. And he was explaining, it's your body, your adrenals, like putting out the cortisol, trying to wake you up to go eat something because you haven't fed it or whatever. And I thought, this is interesting. So then I focused. So as I lay awake, and I usually fall asleep quite well. I haven't been a person who gets up to eat and needs to fall asleep. But I remember focusing, going, if somebody put food in front of me, I would eat it at 2 a.m, which would be absurd for me. But I was like, I think he's right. I'm seeing the dip, and I wake up and I kind of feel it. And then I started playing. That's why I love these continuous glucose monitors, so these little devices you put in the back of your arm, and you could look at your app and watch your blood sugar rise and fall, because it gave you so much data, and I really didn't know. And I started to experiment with different foods before I go to bed. And I was in the church of do not eat 3 hours before bed. Like I was doing walks after dinner and pushing my blood sugar so low without knowing, thinking it's healthy. And I started to figure out, when I went, these walks at the time were not good for me after dinner because it was driving it too low. Or to offset it, I ate probably about 30 minutes before bed, and it was a snack. I know you're not into snacks. I know you don't like that word, snack. Okay, it was a mini meal.
You know me so well, Zora.
I know.
We'll talk about what to do and what I call it instead.
We'll talk about snacks later, but so I would eat. I found out 2 tablespoons of lentils. Right before bed. So for me, something like under 100 calories. And for me, it had to be something carb and protein, let's say. The lentils worked well. If I had a teaspoon of honey or something, that didn't work. If I did yogurt, it didn't work. But that was really interesting to do this experiment. And so sometimes when I see myself waking up at night with that feeling, I go, oh my God, I didn't have many carbs at night, or I had little, or I had none, or before for dinner. So I realized this is the beauty of these self-experimentations. And then when I go back and I say, no, I'm going to eat this, I see myself go, and it's unbelievable how well I sleep. And I was thinking it was something completely different, or because I was thinking, it's not like I wake up with a racing mind or the problems, and there are many reasons why people wake up at 2 a.m., but that was one that never heard about. And I think it's a really important one to drive home to people who are, especially on that track, like you shouldn't eat 3 hours before bed. And tell me a little bit about your clients who are like this.
Yeah. So what you mentioned about eating before bed, it goes back to something bigger. So in the world of blood sugar, going back to the like hyper and hypo. So what we're talking about now is mostly for people who experience some sort of hypoglycemia. And some people can have spikes and crashes, and so have a combination of these things. And then again, there are people who have high blood sugar. So my pre-diabetics, my type 2 diabetics, who experience hypoglycemic dips even in the same symptoms, but their numbers are technically in the normal range. So I had a client who came to me and she's like, I've been hypoglycemic since high school. She's now retired, post-menopause. And I was like, can you put on a CGM before we change anything? Her blood sugar was spiking to 300, 350, and her hypoglycemic dips were around 170. And I go, what happens when it dips like this? She goes, I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going to pass out. And then she has juice or something like that to put her blood sugar back up. And so she's been on this roller coaster for decades, and the doctor missed the fact that she had severe type 2 diabetes because she came in and it's, oh, I feel low blood sugar. I don't know how they miss it. I really don't know. But negligence is the only thing I can think of. It's just,
Yeah. I've seen
yeah.
people like that in
But
my community too, who have, when they put on the CGM, because we do this as a group too, it's really
yeah,
fun to see everybody shares. And there's people who are just high, like they're always high, and then they're low when they start to feel tired
yes.
or low blood sugar-ish. It's not low blood sugar. They're barely in the green zone.
But so I consider that a functional hypoglycemia. So when people are experiencing these low blood sugar symptoms, and no matter what number they're getting to, I consider that still a metabolic hypoglycemia because the metabolic hormones in the background, you're feeling hypoglycemia. You are feeling exactly what anyone whose blood sugar is dropping down to 30 is feeling. You're feeling that same thing because the brain is struggling to get energy. It's just at a different level. It's like the thermostat has been turned all the way up. So we have to treat you as if you have hypoglycemia. And so if you have any of those dips, I put you into the hypoglycemic category to help treat you, to help you heal. Or I'm not allowed to treat anyone, to help regulate your blood sugar. So then people whose blood sugar is high, maybe they're pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, and they do not get any of those dips, I put them in the hyperglycemia category, the high blood sugar category. Those people can do all the things that we hear about for insulin resistance, high blood sugar, things like intermittent fasting, high intensity workouts, building muscle, going in the sauna, doing cold exposure to a reasonable degree, especially for women. We don't need it to be that cold, but not eating between meals, not snacking before bed. Those strategies, lowering carbs, getting into ketosis, like all of that, amazing for these people with high blood sugar. But what's happened is that many people have overstressed their bodies. And so maybe they've done those strategies too much without having a nourishing component. And there's too many stressors also happening in the background. And so the people who have the hypoglycemic are showing signs that their stress bucket has overflowed and that they're not able to recover from the stressors that I just talked about. So lowering carbs, ketosis, fasting, workouts, cold, heat, exposure, all of those things are actually hormetic stressors. So they're stressing the body a little bit so that it adapts and gets stronger. So if I did one bicep curl, it's not enough stress to tell my muscle to adapt and get stronger and bigger. If I do 1,000 bicep curls, I might tear my bicep. I will not recover for days. That's too much stress. But if I maybe did 10 really strict bicep curls, maybe that would be just the right amount of stress to tell my body to, hey, adapt and get stronger because this girl's going to pick up some heavy things. So that concept of hormesis, we have to look at on a person-to-person basis. Not eating before bed for you at that time, Zora, your body was showing the stress manifesting in these dips and wake-ups. Your adrenals have to come in and pump you with stress hormones to kind of save your life, to be honest. Now, that is taxing for the adrenals over time. So it starts depleting the adrenals. It starts dysregulating all the stress hormones. And often we see that lead to more and more crashes. So when they go in the midday sun and they feel awful, they feel dizzy and like a blood sugar crash. When someone doesn't eat between lunch and breakfast, but feels like, oh my gosh, I need a cup of coffee, like I'm starting to get lightheaded or whatever it is, that is showing that their body can't handle these stressors because they're not getting enough fuel. Or people who work out and they're like, oh, I felt fine during the workout, but I crashed afterwards. Well, yeah, because you got stress hormones during the workout that kept you stable, but it made you worse afterwards. It crashed you afterwards because your body, it's often people in a very dysregulated cortisol stress hormone type state. So when people have hypoglycemia, their stress bucket is so overflowing that we can't do the normal blood sugar strategies, even sometimes going for a walk. You saw it, put your blood sugar too low. It's not that walking is bad. It was that walking at that time in that amount for your body, Zora, was too much. And it wasn't a health promoting thing. It's not that walking is bad. So that's where I work with my people with hypoglycemia. We have to go backwards before we can move forward. So, like you mentioned, you added something to eat before bed. Now, I don't call them snacking. I don't like the term snacking because when you think about snacks, what are you thinking about? Then I say mini meal. Very different things come to my mind. Often the mini meal is more balanced. It's not necessarily a packaged snack. So we can think about having something, maybe just a little bit of leftovers from dinner, and we just make that meal a little bigger, and we have a little bit of it before bed. So having mini meals between meals and before bed is a temporary strategy to help stabilize blood sugar. And I want to really emphasize that it is not recommended as a long-term thing, because it will drive more dysregulation over time. So it's a really important first step to take, but I recommend that we also be working on the foundations of why this is happening underneath, because eating before bed is going to drive more dysregulation in the future, because if we are eating lentils, we're going to have glucose spike, it's going to raise insulin, it's going to block leptin from communicating. So your blood sugar might be stable, but over time, it's going to dysregulate your blood sugar. And it's also not leading you to a place of resiliency. It's like, oh, I have to have a little snack before bed. I have to have a little thing before this. I have to eat every couple of hours. It's like our ancestors were not like, I'm feeling a little snackish. Ideally, I think we want to be able to go any amount of time without eating, like reasonable amount of time, go 5 hours between meals, go 6 hours between meals if we have to, and feel good doing it. Do we need to do that every day to have optimal health? No. But I think that my goal for my clients and myself is to have resilience, to not need to eat every couple of hours to have stable blood sugar. Because if you have to, there's dysfunction happening. That's not optimal. But it's an important first step. So it's a little counterintuitive, because my sort of protocol with my clients that I've seen really work is I like to say we have to send the adrenals on vacation. We cannot be using the adrenals to regulate our blood sugar, because it's only going to drive more dysfunction. So if what people come in with, they're like, Danny, I have hypoglycemia and I really want to lose weight. And so what are the weight loss strategies? Don't eat between meals. Don't have any carbs. Don't eat before bed. Go work out. Try to fast. And none of these people can't do these things. They're like, I'm trying not to eat between meals. So then they're just running on stress hormones. They're crashing. They're not feeling well. And so again, they're getting this sort of cortisol involvement, and it's dysregulating them and prolonging the weight loss. And then they're like, well, I just had to eat something. So then they have an urgent hunger, a blood sugar crash, and then they're not making choices that are healthy and nutritious. Oh my God, give me some of my kids' cereal because I'm crashing. In order to lose weight with hypoglycemia, we have to put weight loss on the back burner. And I know that's a really hard thing to say to people. I know it's a really hard thing to hear, but we have to go with that stability and putting the adrenals on vacation. And we do that by eating as often as we need to at first to keep the blood sugar stable. We also have to play with a balance of macronutrients at that time to make sure our blood sugar is not spiking too high and not dipping too low. So often what my clients need is to add, a lot of them are already doing the protein. They have protein done. So, they do not have an issue with adding protein for the most part, but that's an important thing to mention, that you really want to make sure you're getting a good amount of protein at every meal. Approximately 30 grams is a good starting place to kind of see where you're at. But we also really need to add those healthy fats. And many people are doing a lot of protein. They've really lowered their carbs. They're not adding a lot of fat. And carbs and fat are the energy sources. So they're doing this super high protein with low energy. And so they're like, oh, that's why I feel tired all the time. And that's why my blood sugar is crashing. So we need energy. So if you're like, I can't do that many carbs, or my blood sugar crashes or spikes too much, we have to really raise those fats. Now, what I come into with my clients, I'm just literally walking you through what I see every day, is that people struggle to digest protein and fat. They don't have enough stomach acid. They don't have adequate bile flow. And what that manifests as in symptom language is often we raise fats and get constipated. We raise fats or we start to have to run to the bathroom. We have diarrhea. We get nauseous. Food kind of sits in our stomach like a rock if we have low stomach acid. Maybe we don't feel like eating protein. Maybe we don't have a morning appetite. All those are some symptoms of low stomach acid. And if you have low stomach acid, you may get heartburn. You may have reflux. And that low stomach acid will automatically indicate that you don't have good bile flow at your meals, because you need the acid to trigger different hormones to signal to the gallbladder to squeeze. Many of my clients don't have a gallbladder, so they have quite poor fat digestion. So not all hope is lost. You just need to replace that. But that often becomes something we really need to work on. So then all of a sudden, people are absorbing more proteins from their meals and their blood sugar is staying more stable. They're feeling more satiated. Same with the fats. And that's really helping all the cell membranes. It's helping build hormones. And so when we optimize that digestion, oftentimes effortlessly, they're able to go much longer between meals, and they're able to tolerate the foods that keep their blood sugar more stable. So just that in and of itself is so stabilizing and healing for so many people.
So much that we can do. And in fact, it sounds like there are really different types of clients that you have. And I did a really interesting interview with it was all about type 1 diabetics. And what was really interesting is that she said in her community she helps women through menopause. Oh, well, I'll remember her name in just a sec so I can direct you to her. But she said it's interesting because these women have been wearing CGM monitors or just testing their blood sugar for decades now. And so she said, all of us, as we go through menopause, we see that we need more insulin. They have to pump insulin, and it's very clear. They have the data, which was so interesting to hear, because we hear, yes, as we go through menopause, become more insulin resistant and can't eat the carbs like you used to do and all these things. She says, no, it's very clear. We have the data. Like, they should do experiments on us because we're having this, we're all in it. But what she said was also interesting is that when the women who go on hormone therapy, then they use less insulin. Like, it's so interesting just because I do these experiments like a couple times a year, but these women are wearing them their whole lives. And I'm wondering what you're seeing in your community with the women who are going through the menopause transition and what's happening to their blood sugar.
Yeah, their blood sugar is often just going higher. And they're like, everything I used to do is no longer working. And that's when I usually send them to Karen Martell or someone to get hormone replacement, because it really, that estrogen especially, really helps to resensitize the cells to insulin. And so then their blood sugar levels can come down. I do also see other things affecting people who postmenopausal, perimenopausal women, that I think that is just a general thing happening to us in the state of our world in 2026. And these two things are our light environment and our stressors. So there has been a significant decrease in how much time we spend outside. And then we're told to fear the sun and wear sunscreen all the time. And that's blocking us from getting UVB light and natural vitamin D from the sun. And I will say that about 90% of my clients who come see me are already taking vitamin D. The supplements are not the same as what gives life to all life on Earth, which is the sun. And so I'm not suggesting we fry ourselves, but I am suggesting that a lot of the research is showing that a lack of sun exposure is increasing risk of all-cause mortality. And I see that over the summer with my clients, the ones with or without in menopause or not, but even with my menopausal clients, when they would really prioritize getting a healthy tan, not overexposing themselves, and making sure they're getting sunrise light and sunset light, which is that infrared, which is very healing for our skin. That's why we have it in these masks and all that, that their blood sugar would drastically improve. Same thing with cold exposure. So this could just look like not going in an ice tub, but going outside at sunrise in the cooler months in fall and winter, and just allowing the body to get a little bit cold and seeing sunrise. And they would just watch their blood sugar just come down, because we're getting all that infrared and red light from the sun at sunrise, which helps the mitochondria to utilize glucose faster. So that brings the blood sugar down. So a lot of this indoor living is negatively impacting everyone's mitochondria. So everyone's mitochondria are struggling to utilize glucose better. And so this helps anyone in any hormone stage of their life to go outside at sunrise, get grounded, and get those electrons pulling through our feet or our hands. You can just touch a leaf and you're grounded, and getting cold or experiencing UV light from the sun in a safe, healthy way. My client she's in perimenopause, and she was having just high blood sugar every morning, like 103 to 108. And she spent the whole weekend at the pool, and she got nice and tan and had lots of UV light. And her fasting glucose on Monday was 82.
Wow. That's fast.
Yeah, so fast.
Fast results.
So, yeah, so
you see results very quickly.
yeah. So I think that a lot of the lifestyle that we experience of being indoors, avoiding the sun, and then being just inundated with artificial blue light, that narrowband blue light that it comes from our devices, our light bulbs. You can see the lights behind me if you're watching this on video. That's an orange one. That's a red one. And I have an old-fashioned incandescent over there, because I want all of my lights to have infrared light with them. Our modern light bulbs are LEDs. There's no infrared in those. And so it's just this blue light. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. Really bad allergy season over here in Texas. So these light bulbs have just artificial blue light, and that blue light raises cortisol, blood sugar, and insulin.
Hmm.
So we can't have this conversation about blood sugar without talking about light. And what we really don't want to happen is to be exposed to these lights when the sun is down, because our bodies are not used to having blue light when the sun is down, because that signifies daytime. So then the body starts running daytime processes. Oh, time to raise cortisol, time to raise some elevate blood sugar and insulin, and it starts to run the daytime processes that are building and like growth and all that stuff. But what we want to be happening when the sun goes down is melatonin release, repair. So melatonin doesn't only help sleep, it drives all the repair processes in the body. So when we're exposed to artificial blue light at night, not only are we dysregulating our cortisol, our blood sugar, and insulin, we are also slowing down repair processes, which is why artificial light at night is linked to every chronic disease you can imagine, but including a lot of hormonal cancers, because it's shifting our hormones, because it's causing cortisol release. So it's wild that when we go with more of these fire-toned lights at night, people sleep better, they have fewer hot flashes at night, and also people use the orange lens blue blocking glasses. I love those. And the clear ones, unfortunately, they don't work. If you could still see blue, it's not enough. The orange lenses or red lenses at night, if I use the red ones in my house, I can't see anything. So I have to go with the orange ones.
Yeah, that's pretty
But that really helps people to fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and there are even studies that show that people who wore those orange lens blue blockers before bed for a month, for 2 to 3 hours before bed, had statistically significant improvements in their fasting blood glucose and in scores of insulin resistance, the HOMA-IR scores. So this stuff is serious. And this is also why a lot of people are just so stuck with trying to fix their blood sugar. They're like, I've lowered carbs. I can't lower carbs anymore. And there's a lot of other areas to look. And it's not only about lowering carbs. Like maybe your body doesn't want that low of carbs right now. So when we start to bring in these pieces with light and circadian rhythm, we actually get more flexibility and we get more resilience. And so I see that my clients often tend towards that seasonal eating, and so they can go a little bit lower carb or ketosis over the winter. And then as carbs start to come back in season locally, they start to include those local seasonal carbs and are able to tolerate them better. And so this is really important because so many people are like on these low carb diets for years and years and years, and that ends up pulling that leptin too far low, and they're still struggling with their weight, but they can't lose weight, and then their blood sugar's dipping, or then they start to go into that category of people who their stress bucket's too full, overflowing.
Yeah, when you think about the women, at least in my community, who are trying to regulate blood sugar or trying to lose weight or gain muscle, and they're pulling out all these carbs, like they go so low carb. And I tend to think, well, let's look at the bodybuilders. I don't know much their diet. I know that they do this carb cycling. I know they're packing in the carbs too. And there's ups and downs, but it's like they're not restricting all their carbs and they're looking pretty good. Not that just because you look like that, you're healthy, but in general, you can see these people need. So if you're pushing the exercise and fasting and not eating your carbs, well, it makes sense to me. It's why it can backfire, but we need to find out a better way.
Yeah. And I just want to comment on what you said about that. So one of the things is that people will maybe eat carbs and they're like, oh, okay, I should eat carbs. And they're not working out like bodybuilders, right? So you may be eating too many carbs for how much you're using during the day. Do you need high octane fuel to sit at a desk and type? No. But on days where you're more active, maybe you could increase the carbs. What I see for my clients is that they are carb intolerant because when you're insulin resistant, you're really in a state of carbohydrate intolerance. So to get to a place where you're not insulin resistant anymore and you can tolerate carbs, that's kind of maybe the first step that we need to do for you to be able to tolerate carbs. But a prolonged low carb diet is often not the way. I see people doing these low carb diets and they're not doing well, but they're like, I can't add carbs in, I'm kind of stuck here. And I call that low carb purgatory. And I think that lower carb could be okay a little bit longer term, but I like more of a variability with the seasons. But if you're going to be low carb, I say like ketosis is very healing because your body is getting a lot of unlimited fuel because you have these fat stores. So I see ultra low carb as somewhat damaging to the body because especially if it's not able to burn fat easily for fuel, now it really doesn't have much energy. And so it's getting a lot of that energy from gluconeogenesis, turning protein into glucose. And you're probably just tired and craving, and it doesn't feel sustainable, but you just feel stuck. You're like, I can't do carbs. So I would suggest people to consider trying a shorter term ketosis if they're going to be lower carb, because there's so much healing in a temporary stint of ketosis, but not staying there forever. Ketosis is not a diet and it's not a lifestyle. It's a metabolic state. So you have to test with blood and make sure that you're getting into ketosis. A lot of people think they've done keto, and what they've done is ultra low carb, which I just said isn't that helpful. Most women don't know that they have to lower their protein drastically to get into ketosis. And so again, it's not something we want to do forever, but I did keto for over 5 months, and that's how I healed my PCOS. And then I was able to add back in carbs. And then I found that I went lower carb and did low carb too long and was like, oh, my hair's starting to thin. So then I had to add more carbs back in. So it's a journey. There's no exact right answer, but I think that this ultra low carb diet that women sort of get stuck on is not helpful because you're just not including the energy sources, either carbs or fat.
Let's define carbs, because I think there's carbs and there are carbs. So when you say low carb or ultra low carb, what are you talking about?
So I'm talking about probably under 50 grams of carbs a day,
And does
and
it matter
maybe
where they come from?
maybe even under 30. And when I talk about carbohydrates, I think that a really good place for a lot of people to go with their carbs is to switch their ultra processed carbs to whole food carbohydrates. So kind of how they grew from the ground. Fruits that are ideally local and seasonal, starchy vegetables. I've been liking legumes. It's hard to come from the paleo camp where it's like, don't have a legume. And I really love the fiber in beans. And so it's really beneficial, especially for menopausal women, perimenopausal women, to help with the estrogen detox. So upping fiber is a really important thing for blood sugar and for hormones and detox and everything. So really big fan of fiber, which can often go really low on these low carb diets. People, trust me, you're going to be disappointed when you look at how much fiber is in vegetables. I used to have so many vegetables. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even getting 20 grams of fiber a day. And so I really like basil seeds. They're like chia seeds, but more fiber, fewer oxalates. But yeah, having carbohydrates from whole food sources is definitely going to be better than processed carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates. So rice versus a rice cake, a mango versus a dried mango. So potato versus a potato chip. We know that potato chips aren't healthy, but when we juice something, we remove the fiber, it hits our bloodstream faster. So the more processed a carbohydrate, the higher glycemic it will be. However, just because it's a whole food carbohydrate doesn't mean it can't spike the SHIT out of your blood sugar. That was one thing that I was very remiss. I was like, oh man, I did not realize what a sweet potato did to my blood sugar. Like sweet potatoes, I love them, but my blood sugar does not. So it's just a food that really spikes me. And some people are like, oh, I'm fine with sweet potatoes, but white potatoes are horrible for me. So that's where those CGMs come in, where we can see sometimes it's like the poison is in the dose. And then there's just such variability from person to person. Some people are like, why am I spiking from blueberries? And some people are like, oh, I do blueberries on keto. I'm totally fine with them. So putting a CGM on and seeing which carbohydrates do what to your body is the most important thing that you can do. For me, I don't do that well with starches. I do so much better with fruits. And yes, some of the sugar in fruits is fructose. So I'm not going to see it represented on the CGM. But whenever I have starch, it causes me to crave sugar. It's like I should have just had the sugar, you know? So I do better with seasonal fruits, and that's my go-to. And then I do like legumes, but again, not too much because there's starch in there. So everyone's going to be different on that front. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I just wanted to give people an idea what they mean about carbs. And I think when you do a certain therapeutic diet, probably, you got to go with the grams. But I think, so you just to visualize, we're not eating the bread and the rice and the cookies and things that we love. It's just go outside, go to an airport or Starbucks, and that's what we're talking about. And I always think it's like a little bit of foraging. You'll find the thing that you have there. But when I started calculating my macronutrients and trying to understand, my husband was like, you like, don't eat carbs. I'm like, I do. I just decided to take the refined carbohydrates out of my life one day.
Yeah.
And then
one day.
And then
as we do.
Yeah. And then I calculated my macros and I'm like, no, I'm like 30, 30, 30, like 30 protein, 30 fat, 30 carbs, more or less. I'm like, actually, I am eating a lot of carbs. And he's like, but you're not. And I'm like, well, they're coming mostly from vegetables or potatoes or quinoa or whatever it was I was doing at the time. And so that's why I sometimes got to be very clear. It's like the fruit. I love fruit. Oh my gosh. It's just,
Me too. I'm such a fruitaholic.
hard to resist for me
Yeah.
sometimes when they're seasonal, especially because they're so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They're seasonal for a reason.
I know. And that's one of the things I just want to bring up is that there's a really big difference between a therapeutic healing diet when you're in a healing phase with your blood sugar versus a maintenance state. So when someone is hearing all this information, it's like, cool, so I have to cut out everything I love for the rest of my life. No, 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 you do not. But a healing phase is going to be really different. You are going to, if you want to heal, have to set some boundaries, have to cut some foods out, have to say no to some things, have to reduce quantities of things. And that can allow you to have the fruit in the summer and tolerate it. And it can allow you to have the ice cream, because ice cream is my favorite food, once in a while, and not it not be a big deal, it not cause a huge blood sugar crash, or it not cause me to be craving all the time. So I ran my blood sugar mastery program during the holidays, and what I tend to see with my clients is that they're on this healing journey and they're like, oh, I decided to have XYZ over Thanksgiving or over Christmas, and the next day, oh, I was feeling tired, maybe a little sugar hangover, but they got back on track. And so sometimes it's not that we have to be so 100%, but to have this baseline of here's what works to keep my blood sugar stable. Here's what's helping my insulin come down and my hormones regulate and my inflammation to come down. And, oh, I went to a birthday party and I wanted to indulge, and then I come right back to doing what I'm doing. So it doesn't have to be the world's most restrictive thing ever. We just want to really know thyself and know what works for you to help you towards this healing goal. And I want to say that if you're wanting to add carbs in and they're just not working for you right now, that there's nothing wrong with you, but it just might be the season of life. Maybe you need to get on estrogen, or you can work to build more muscle and build these sinks for glucose to go, or start walking after each meal to help your blood sugar to stabilize, to use that glucose you just put into the system. Start doing some cold therapies. I do what's called a cold girl walk. And so I just underdress for the weather. So if it's 35 degrees, I'll wear yoga pants, a tank top, and maybe gloves and go for a walk. And ooh, it is cold, but it feels exhilarating. And when you have a CGM on, you see that when you get cold, you have non-insulin mediated glucose uptake, which in plain English means your muscles are pulling in blood sugar without needing insulin, which is huge for so many people who have insulin resistance. So this is a free way to really benefit from, just get so many benefits from what's going on outside. And I don't go out in a tank top if it's -18 where you live. I live in Austin. It doesn't get that cold here, except for it will this weekend, apparently. Be safe, but challenge yourself to get outside and get in the elements, because there's so much outside that we can use to heal ourselves. And even sauna can be really helpful for those who can tolerate that blood sugar spike and dip after they're in the sauna. It's really great for our mitochondria and our metabolic health. And I have to say that that second area, remember I said that modern life is disrupting us, right? We're also on our phones a lot. There's lots of Wi-Fi. They rolled out 5G during COVID, and that our frequency environment has shifted. And Wi-Fi signals, radiation, is like invisible light. And so it is very disruptive to our physiology. And so ideally, we just want to think about at least turning off the Wi-Fi at night while we sleep so we can facilitate more melatonin release and repair. That's really helpful. And not charging your phone close by, and not having your phone close by, even on airplane mode, it's still emitting radiation. Increasing your distance from devices, like it shouldn't be right next to me. I should just put it an arm's length away. So distance is our friend when it comes to electronics. So our frequency environment, light is a frequency, Wi-Fi is a frequency. Our frequency environment has changed a lot in modern times, and that's messing with us. So there's things that we can do to mitigate, and we don't have to be afraid of these things. But then the other area that I see that's become a really big issue for a lot of people and is resulting in physical symptoms is our repressed emotions and our stress and our nervous system. So first off, I've taken a lot of time off my phone. I have multiple app blockers with multiple settings, so I have to do a lot of stuff to get into Instagram. It kicks me off after a certain amount of time. I have to do this to protect myself. Like an addict, I have to set absolute limits. I work on there. I wouldn't be on Instagram at all if I could, but that's where a lot of my business comes from, so I have to be on there, but I have to set myself up for success. I have to unfollow accounts that give me anxiety. I have to a lot of my clients, they're constantly looking up what to do. They're like, what do I do? I have this new symptom. Oh, I had to take this form of estrogen. I want to take this supplement. Is this supplement good? Maybe this peptide. Blah, blah, blah. Like, do we hear how stressful that is? Constantly thinking there's something wrong with my body. I have to be different than the way I am. I understand we're struggling, but coming at this from a place of, oh my God, I'm deficient. This isn't right. There's something wrong. I'm not good enough. I don't look like the way I look. Like, this is bad and wrong. It's all coming from a place of fear. And we can't heal a body that we fear. Coming to our health and approaching it through the lens of fear looks like controlling, micromanaging. And so you said, I use a CGM and it gave me so much information. But some people use CGMs and they're panicking every time they see their blood sugar. They're judging themselves every time they see it high. They're freaking out because their blood sugar is dipping a little. And so the line between really helpful and dysregulating is very thin, right? So maybe know thyself. Maybe know that, wow, if I wake up and my Oura ring is telling me I'm a 68 readiness score and that messes with me, maybe it's time to take off the ring, set it aside, and just tune into the body. And so what I encourage, instead of coming from this micromanaging, controlling, judging, rushing, anxious, frustrated kind of energy of fear, that we ideally want to approach our experience through the lens of love. And that looks like being gentle with ourselves, getting curious. My blood sugar's higher today. I wonder what's going on. And not making it mean something else. And when you are coming from a place of love, there's trust. There's trust that I live in a body that is self-healing. If I cut my hand, I don't need to do anything for it to heal. It just heals on its own. It knows what to do. And we're so cut off from that intelligence, from that remembering that our body is so intelligent and so amazingly designed, and it is self-healing. But if we they do these experiments. If you yell at rice and then you tell another thing of rice that you love it, the yelled at rice grows mold. So if we are constantly coming at our body like it's wrong and defective, we are not in an energy state that's promoting healing. And so I see this with my clients so often that they're just trying to get it right. They're just trying to find the right thing to do. If I just had the right balance of macros, if I just had the right dose of hormones, and you can't get it right. I love you so much, fellow perfectionists, but we can't get this right. There is no right and wrong in nutrition. There's a cost-benefit analysis of everything we do. So coming from love looks gentle, looks patient, looks like allowing really tough feelings to be there. Oh, having a hot flash again. Okay, this is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. And I'm just allowing it to be here. And okay, I see you. Like, I see, body, that you are uncomfortable with something, and I'm trying to understand you, right? Or with me, I'm having this allergy flare. And so I'm wanting to rip my eyes out because they're so itchy. I blew my nose. Like, I used 60 tissues last night in the middle of the night, and I'm just like being with it. What are you wanting me to know? And so I really love what I learned from Nicole Sachs, she has a book called Mind Your Body. And a lot of times our symptoms are actually expression of chronic stressors in the body and repressed emotions. Sometimes our symptoms are there because oftentimes in people, like she talks about in her book, people who are often my clients, we're people pleasers, perfectionists. We don't want to let anyone down. We're high achieving. We're often eldest daughters. We're fawning. We're putting people first. We're not wanting to have hard conversations with people. And so sometimes our symptoms are actually speaking for us. So I got divorced 2 years ago and I haven't started dating yet. And I have all these stories with dating. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to start dating again. And so I get on the apps for 2 days. And 2 days later, my allergies come out. And I'm blowing my nose in the car one day. And I'm like, I can't be dating with these allergies. And I go, oh, I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing there. I truly feel that this is because in the past, I didn't say no. I didn't use my voice to protect myself, to keep people away. And maybe it's because my body is experiencing so much fear with this. So it's not that we want to brush over the fear that we have when we have symptoms. We don't want to just shove it down and be like, no, it's all love and light. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that we don't want to be coming from fear, but we've got to get these repressed emotions out of our body. They trigger our nervous system to be in a fight or flight state, and that directly dysregulates our blood sugar. I have a client, she had blood sugar crashes when she came to see me. Her blood sugar is super stable now, but it's sitting high. And she's like, Danny, it's just sitting around 100, kind of in this pre-diabetic range, and she's not having a good experience with her husband right now. So her husband went out of town for a week. Danny, my blood sugar's been in the 80s all week long.
Oh no.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
So
The
when
truth
we talk,
reveals.
it's hard to talk about blood sugar and not share these sort of things because how we talk to ourselves impacts our blood sugar. How we talk to ourselves impacts our mitochondria. And we know that the body keeps the score. So if we're shoving down all these things, even the fears that we have about our health, and we're just pushing it down and trying to be like, oh no, it's okay, then we are dysregulating our body. So I do encourage my clients, I sort of have this three-pronged approach working with people. We have to look at the food, the minerals, the macros, the digestion. We also have to look at the light and the frequency environment and getting outside and all that. And we also have to look at our emotional environment, what we repress, what we don't want to feel, what we don't want to think about, and get that out, cry it out, scream, shake your body. And that can allow you to have that space where you can actually feel calm, you can actually feel regulated, you can actually come with this energy of love and curiosity. So I think all of those things matter equally as much when it comes to optimizing our blood sugar.
Wow, there's so much that impacts the blood sugar. And I could vouch for what you just said in terms of the emotion, the fear, because just yesterday I had one of our members reach out to me who, when she did the blood sugar monitor for the first time about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more. And she was one of those who had the high blood sugar, it was staying high the whole time. It was never coming really down.
Yeah.
And she was so stressed. And so she had all of these inputs, not only from me, but from our guest experts and the functional medicine doctors who come in our group. And the message was, you're doing too much. You're in fear. You've got so much stress. And even doing the sugar monitor was like, yeah, stressful for
Yeah, every
her.
time she looks at it, she's getting re-triggered.
Yeah. And so that she just sent me a message saying how happy she is because she decided for the last 4 weeks to just work on the nervous system. That's all she did. And she says, I'm exercising less. I'm eating more. I'm not bloated anymore. I'm not having hot flashes. I'm not having all of these disturbances. The blood sugars, she hasn't monitored it, but she doesn't feel low blood sugar anymore. And it's just so amazing. And all she did, well, she did the opposite of what many women are trying to do now to lose weight or feel better, is like push hard on the exercise and eat less. And she did completely opposite. And I'm sure she was afraid. You're fearful for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think, oh my God, I'm already.
If I don't work out, what's going to happen? Like, how can I not work out? My blood sugar is dysregulated. And
So it was nice
sometimes
to hear that.
more is not better.
Exactly. So what you're saying is definitely true. I've seen it multiple times with my own eyes, and it was just nice to hear that testimony yesterday. But I'm going to have to let you go, and I could ask many more questions. I really want to do a rapid fire with you.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we're going to have short answers to these because you're the expert in blood sugar regulation. You specialize in metabolic health, and I want to end with this rapid fire. So this is keeping the midlife woman in mind. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Keto.
A powerful, temporary, therapeutic protocol, not a diet, not a lifestyle.
Snacking.
There's no such thing as a healthy snack. I love mini meals. I like that concept instead if you need them. But snacking is not good for people who have higher blood sugar, but maybe need it temporarily for people who have blood sugar crashes.
Breath work.
I personally like calming breath work. I don't like the arousing one, but it can be really important to help regulate your nervous system and calm your body, bring yourself into a parasympathetic state.
Blood sugar monitors.
Can be really helpful, but if you are dysregulated and fearful every single time you check them, maybe you can pause it.
Heavy metal detox.
I think that we need to redox before we detox. We really need to get outside and get our bodies out of a cell danger response in order to have the natural detox capabilities of our body upregulated instead of going in and pushing all these detox supplements and often being left with a lot of histamine symptoms when we're doing that because we're fighting against our body's protective cellular response.
Fasting.
Can be really helpful for people with high blood sugar, high insulin, or high leptin, but I recommend that people do not skip breakfast because then they're running on stress hormones all morning and then eating in a window that's much later in the day where we don't have as good of a glucose response. So if you want to fast, especially if you're a midlife woman, I recommend to do a skip dinner or early dinner instead.
Microplastics.
I don't know on this one. Just
That's okay. Mold.
is something that I'm dealing with currently and it's a big one and it drives a lot of hypoglycemia in clients and a lot of panic, anxiety, and is a really silent problem for so many. And yeah, it's a rough one.
Hormone replacement therapy.
So important for women. Big fan.
Apple cider vinegar.
I think it's a little overrated, but I do find it to be helpful. It's not your sole protocol for helping your blood sugar, but it can improve your blood sugar responses to meals. And when thing I really like about it is the digestive benefits when you have it in a very concentrated form. So about a tablespoon in a very small glass of water right before a meal can help increase stomach acid and bile flow, which supports better breakdown of food. So it has multiple benefits, but a lot of people will do it in a really diluted glass of water. Some people feel really helped from it, so keep it if it's working for you. But I know a lot of people who don't tolerate it either, and they're like, oh no, I can't do it. It's okay.
Stress devices like wearables monitor your HRV and sleep, etc.
These can be helpful unless you're using them in a way to, if you're very type A and perfectionistic and it's causing you more stress and causing you to think that I need to do this right, I need to have these perfect scores, or I would say I would probably look at leaving them. They're less helpful than you think because they drive that dysregulation of feeling like I need this to be perfect.
Metformin.
Is a mitochondrial toxin, and when people take metformin, it negates the benefits of exercise. My clients are able to wean off of metformin in a couple of weeks and get even more benefits.
Berberine.
Overrated. Completely overrated.
Dihydroberberine.
Same. I mean, there are certain people for whom it can be somewhat helpful, but I don't think we all have a berberine deficiency, and that's why our blood sugar is high. So it's not a comprehensive protocol for optimal metabolic health. There's no one supplement or nutrient that's going to regulate your blood sugar. I would always ask, why is your blood sugar dysregulated? And chances are you got a lot of unexpressed emotions, your light environment, your food. So I would start there.
GLP-1s or weight loss peptides.
Can be really helpful for some. I question the use of them for people with hypoglycemia.
Sauna.
I love sauna. I love infrared saunas. It's really good for expanding the exclusion zone water that we have and really supportive for our mitochondria. And I think it's very helpful for detox, but it's through the effect on the water in our body.
Cinnamon.
Lovely spice. It's not going to do anything for your blood sugar that I've seen. I mean, I don't know. They may have studies on it, but it's just, I don't want people to think, oh, I'm just going to take cinnamon and apple cider vinegar and my blood sugar is going to be great. The people who have, oh, but I'm taking berberine and cinnamon and gymnema and all these things, I don't see that helping. I don't see it really helping. And I don't think also anything that, especially some of those herbs, like the bitter melon, like those blood sugar blends, that it's, oh, let's push the blood sugar down. Is that really the method that is going to be most helpful?
After dinner walks.
I love after dinner walks for people it doesn't drive their blood sugar too low. So just like you were talking about, you notice that your blood sugar dropped too low. But for many people, walking after meals, I say is the best time to walk. The only kind of snacks that I like are exercise snacks. And if you can walk after every time you eat, that's great. You just want to be mindful of your blood sugar and make sure it's not going too low.
And the last one is meals before or after exercise.
I like meals before exercise because my clients specifically are way too overly stressed, and fasted workouts are overall a net negative for them because I see it being too stressful on their bodies. I think that to eat a meal and then burn what we've just eaten and use that fuel is often the most helpful for my clients.
Excellent. All right. Danielle, I'm going to have to let you go. I'm so sad, but we'll have you back because I have more questions. And if anyone wants to follow you, you're on Instagram. I love your content there. Facebook, your website is daniellehamiltonhealth.com, and your podcast. Like, there's a lot of things that you mentioned today that I learned through your podcast, Light Up Your Metabolism. And have all of these links in the show notes. And you've got the blood sugar mastery. Tell us a little bit about that. And you've also given us a free guide. So tell us what's going on.
So my Blood Sugar Mastery program is an 8-week cohort program. It's a small group where people do get prescriptions for CGMs if they're here in the US, and I coach each person individually. So if I usually end up working with people who have tried a lot of DIY stuff. They've seen doctors and endocrinologists, and they've gotten GI maps and lab tests and all sorts of things, and they're still struggling. And so it's often not because maybe they've tried a lot of the things that I've mentioned, but often it's the synergy of how we put all these things together, the mind-body work that we do, the digestive support that people receive, the gradual shift of the macro balance, perhaps getting into a state of nutritional ketosis, which is not mandatory and not everyone does, but sometimes it's the way all these recommendations come together that allows this beautiful shift in the body. And people have such amazing transformations. I've run this program, I think 28 times. I'm running it 5 times this year. And people every single round are reversing type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, hypoglycemia, insulin resistance. My client just posted yesterday. She said, I lost 19 pounds in the program and her A1C went from 5.9 to 5.2. And it was just the 8-week program. Healing can be really quick when we target the right way. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you're just hitting your head on the wall when it comes to your blood sugar, those are the people who I specialize in helping.
Oh, I heard you on Karen Martell's podcast, and she was just singing your praises in terms of the people who she's gotten the hormones balanced, but they need to work on their metabolic health or their blood sugar. And she sends them all to you. And she says every time people get fabulous results. So I'm confident that you're helping a lot of people, and you're my go-to blood sugar person as well.
Oh,
So.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to hear feedback and hear the girls who do enter your program or reach out to you and how it all goes. And thank you for listening to the end of this podcast, to everyone who has. You're obviously very interested in blood sugar. And thank you, Danielle, for your time. I really appreciate your knowledge and just sharing it with our community.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care. Have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you guys are.